It is draft season, Chiefs Kingdom, as we will be having our first NFL mock draft for the Kansas City Chiefs of 2023. The big topic of conversation, will the Chiefs choose pass rusher or wide receiver in the first round? We will sort all of that out. But before we do dive into my mock draft, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, as I'm going to keep you up to date on anything Kansas City Chief related that you do not want to miss out on. And without further ado, let's have some fun. As we are nearing April, the NFL draft month, we see all the draft speculation is going crazy for everyone's team. No different with the Kansas City Chiefs. So what I want to do every Sunday is release a mock draft version of my own, and we'll discuss, we'll debate, and we'll have fun. The topic of conversation surrounding the Kansas City Chiefs is their wide receiver depth is pretty slim. And if you ask Chiefs Kingdom, they need extra pass rushers. So we'll try to solidify that all today, and we'll see who fits this team best. Let's dive right into that. I think when it comes to Chiefs Kingdom, there are two holes on both sides of the ball that they want to address. On the offensive side of the ball, it's wide receiver. And on the defensive side of the ball, it's an edge, it's a pass rusher. And honestly, I think it's perspective-wise on how you would want to address it in the draft. You can go either or. You can go first round wide receiver, you can go second round edge, or you could flip it and go vice versa and first round edge, second round wide receiver. What we're going to do here today, and it's going to rotate week in and day out with my mock drafts, is we're going to select a pass rusher in the first round out of Kansas State, Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I don't know why, and like I mentioned, just because he's my pick for today, it's going to change. And there's plenty of different pass rushers that from like mid first round to early second round that could fit the Kansas City Chiefs, and you could solidify them to be maybe a rotational starter day one. Kind of like how George Karlaftis came in, where he was rotating with Carlos Dunlap, or he was rotating with Frank Clark. I think Anudike-Uzomah would be a perfect rotational guy to come in and bring pressures right away. He actually is kind of someone who, in a sense, not like very similar, but kind of like George Karlaftis in the motor sense wise. When I see his highlights, it's when he sometimes, actually multiple times, is double teamed and he will still cause the pressure. He may not get to the quarterback every time, but he will make his presence where the quarterback will get uncomfortable and he'll have to throw a ball he didn't want to throw. And if you have two high-end motor guys, likely one of them is going to get to the quarterback. And if you have Chris Jones, who he isn't just a motor guy, he will literally run through you and he will take you down. That brings a dominant D-line. What I do like about Uzomah as well is he is a big, big dude. Like, I don't know what kind of stature he compares to like a George Karlaftis, but on some of the tape, like I mentioned, where I can see him bullying two guys, that is something I really, really like to see. And another thing that stuck out for me, which may not for a lot of people as well, is he brings a different type of swagger to the defense. And you've seen that when he was playing with Kansas State in college. That's also something the Kansas City Chiefs may be looking at as well, is a leader for that defense. Not to say someone to replace Chris Jones by any sense of the imagination, but we all knew for many years that Frank Clark was the voice of that defense to get them hyped up. And he's not the only one, because we know there are characters on that defense that they get live, they bounce around, and they get that defense hype when they make plays. But you lost a sound vocal leader on that defense. And just watching Uzomah as well, he is a character after he makes a sack, and he's a lively personality that I believe could fit perfectly with the Kansas City Chiefs. Also, if you get to real stats as well, he had 8.5 sacks last year, but also he had 40-plus pressures. That is huge. Definitely for a defensive line of the Kansas City Chiefs who are all about pressures and all about getting to the quarterback. I believe he would be a great rotational piece. And honestly, I think with anyone, and we know how the Chiefs maneuver with rookies, they all start rotating wise until it gets to around week 6, week 8, and it's like, all right, it's all gas, no brakes. You about to be fully enforced. And that's what we saw with George Karlaftis. He was that heavy motor dude who he'd get his pressures, but he didn't record any sacks. I think he recorded 1 sack in his first 8 games. And then over the last 8 games straight, he had 6 sacks. So I'm excited to see what George Karlaftis can do in the future. but I'm also excited to see if the Kansas City Chiefs will add a complementary guy. Whether it be Uzama, whether it be Ojulari, there is so many guys that can help benefit this Chiefs D-line quickly right away. And why I focused on pass rusher more than I focused on wide receiver here, and you've heard me mention it in previous videos as well, is if the Kansas City Chiefs decide to stay at 31, which is what I'm going to do in these drafts until I feel a little risky and I might want to make some trades, but right now we're going to stay in place. But if the Chiefs stay at 31, the depth at pass rusher is way more nicer than the depth at wide receiver, because you have to imagine that guys like Quentin Johnson, JSN, Jordan Anderson, they're going to be gone. Addison, I said Anderson, my bad. And maybe even Zay Flowers, they will be gone. So if you're at pick 31, you might be reaching for guys like a Josh Downs or a guy who could be in like a mid-second round pick or a later second round pick, and you're picking him at 31 just because there's a hole. And I don't like that, because once you get to pick 33 at the end of second round, there are some ballers, and we'll discuss one of them here shortly, but I like the depth at the later of the second round compared to the first round. That's why I feel like the Chiefs can get a bigger bang for their buck going pass rusher. But again, you take this week by week, things can change. But I like Uzama out of Kansas State at 31 for the Kansas City Chiefs in the first round. Now, with our second round pick number 63, I have the Kansas City Chiefs now selecting a wide receiver out of SMU, Rashee Rice. And honestly, he's my favorite wide receiver to watch right now, because I think he can be an elite stud in the league. And honestly, when you look at some of the second round receivers that have come out in years past, there have been some elite talent. First name that comes off board is guys like a DK Metcalf, AJ Brown. Just because they're second round picks doesn't mean they can't be top 5, top 10 receivers. Terry McLaurin just popped in my head. These guys are still elite talents, and I think a guy like Rashee Rice could fit that stature and that mold. The only thing I was hesitant at the moment to select Rashee Rice with my pick in the second round, because I'm trying to be just as realistic as what the Kansas City Chiefs might do. And we know the Chiefs are more into the small speedster type of guy. And Rice, he does have speed, but the stature, he's a bulky dude. He's a possession guy. He's 6'2". He's that big stature guy that the Kansas City Chiefs, specifically Chiefs Kingdom, has been looking for. And I don't know if Brett Veach, Coach Reed, is going to go in that direction for a 6'2" wide receiver. We've seen it in years past. We saw it last year. We drafted Sky Moore, who I have high hopes for, and I believe he is in for a big breakout year next year. But Chiefs Kingdom didn't like that. Even though we selected Sky Moore, we passed on George Pickens, who was a more bigger, physical, athletic receiver. And then when you go back to Mecole Hardman's draft, we selected Mecole Hardman, even though a lot of people are saying and thought, well, with all the Tyreek Hill allegations, that this was a Tyreek Hill replacement and it was to fill that void. But there was still DK Metcalf on the board, and that made a lot of Chiefs Kingdom feel a different way. Another bigger stature wide receiver. And Chiefs have proved it time in and time out. That's the type of receiver they like. The guys like a Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill, Sky Moore. And I was struggling to see if they would go for a guy like Rashee Rice. But this is my mock draft, and I feel like this would be the best fit at the moment. And also, me trying to convince myself that he would be a perfect fit is the Kansas City Chiefs already got a guy like Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore. Same stature, same mold. They both kind of in different facets. Toney is more of an agility, athletic freak. Sky Moore is your possession, speedster kind of guy. And you got MVS. He's taller, but also he's your speed deep threat where you're going to get out of. You do not have a guy like Rashee Rice on this team, which makes me think, if Brett Veach and if Coach Reed are thinking that way and they already view, we got a Sky Moore, we got a Kadarius Toney. Do we still need to add these little speedsters, possession guys on our team? Maybe we add a different mold of wide receiver, and maybe Rashee Rice is that guy. And just looking at him, he's different to me. I don't know why. I feel like, man, if he went to a bigger school, he would be a first-round wide receiver all day, every day. And I feel like once he hits the league, he's going to catch a lot of people off guard, and his talent is going to be on display week 1, specifically if he's drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. Mahomes is going to find the ball early and often. And also, I didn't want to leave a guy out because I know Chiefs Kingdom is all hype and praise for Justin Ross. With Justin Ross, I just got to see it to believe it. I know he was a first-round talent, but if you're going to talk about injury concerns with Kadarius Toney, Justin Ross's injury concerns are way bigger than what Kadarius Toney ever dealt with. So I kind of just need to see Justin Ross do it on the field before I'm fully on that hype train. I do wish him the best, and I do hope he makes the roster, but also he was an undrafted free agent. Whether it be because of injuries and not lack of talent, it's still an undrafted free agent. So the Kansas City Chiefs will still put depth in the wide receiving core, which means Justin Ross is still going to have to earn that position and fight his way up the ladder. I'm not counting against him. I just think it'd be a tougher road than a guy who's drafted in the second round. So it's going to be interesting to see, and we'll definitely keep up to date on Justin Ross, who has also been training his ass off. Same with Sky Moore. They have both released videos that they're already working hard, which you love to see. Guys who are basically, actually the whole Chiefs receiving core is considered underdogs at the moment because one, Chiefs Kingdom wants a wide receiver number one, whether it be DeAndre Hopkins or any of these other big name guys. They're not focusing on them as number ones. That puts a chip on their shoulder to say, hey, we're here and we'll show you we are good enough. And they will be good enough. It's just that the thing that concerns me with the wide receiving core is the depth. Wide receivers will be added regardless. And I think right now I am fully comfortable with just drafting guys instead of trying to trade for a DeAndre Hopkins or an Odell Beckham Jr. I know that sounds like a surprise to a lot of you guys because I've been driving that DeAndre Hopkins hype train like crazy, and I've been pitching for OBJ. But right now, I'm focused in on the draft. So let's get this, guys, and let's bolster this team with youth, talent, and this team will be Super Bowl contenders every single year. And I think Rashee Rice, he is an elite wide receiver, definitely matching up with Patrick Mahomes. Now, before we get into my last pick in the mock draft, I want to list out what are my top 3 needs for the Kansas City Chiefs. Like I mentioned, wide receiver and edge rusher, either way you have it, it's no big deal. Those can be interchangeable. I think that's given. Those are 2 holes that need to be filled regardless. Now, my next hole may catch people off guard, but it's definitely a hole, and I would put defensive tackle as the 3rd biggest hole for the Kansas City Chiefs. I know a lot of Chiefs Kingdom would say, whoa, what about left tackle? What about right tackle? As I mentioned time in and time out on this channel, you kind of got to focus on what Brett Veach and Coach Reid have been preaching and have been saying. Whether they be reports or not, most of these reports are legit, even if they're coming from James Palmer, because he's very close-knit with the organization. But what we've heard as of late is that the Kansas City Chiefs believe that they could slide Jawan Taylor in as left tackle, and they believe Lucas Niang will be a solid right tackle. So you have to take that for what it's worth, and those will be your first 2 guys given that opportunity. That means the Chiefs may take someone at an offensive tackle position if they feel it's right, but if it's not there and they feel like they got to address the different hole, they will. And defensive tackle, I feel, is the bigger hole because at the moment, even though we are waiting for Chris Jones to get a contract extension, he hasn't got one yet. Not saying he won't be with the team, but if you foreshadow in the next year, 2024, there will be no defensive tackles signed going into the offseason. So there needs to be someone added there also. Even if Chris Jones does sign his contract extension, which, can we get that underway, please? Feels like I'm preaching, asking for this every other video. Veach, sign that man. Get Stone Cold under contract for the rest of his career. But we will stay calm. We will stay cool. We will stay collective. When he does sign that extension, the glaring need has been he has never had a co-partner to him in the defensive tackle position. Now, he's had some cool, like, Derek Nottie, Colin Saunders. We have been all praising Colin Saunders, but now he's off to different pastures with the New Orleans Saints. And I do like Nottie, but is he a solidified, secure defensive tackle of the future that can play basically Robin to Chris Jones' Batman? No, I don't believe so, or it's what already happened. I think Derek Nottie is a rotational guy. I'm a big fan of Tershawn Wharton as well, but we got to see how he bounces back from that ACL injury, which I know he will. But Wharton is a huge athletic freak, but to me right now, he could just be a rotational piece. And also, the Kansas City Chiefs did sign 2 guys this week. Basically, I think they're going to be I don't want to say practice squad guys or anything like that, but they're going to be camp battles. They're going to be fighting for their job. So that's nothing solidified. It adds depth to the position right now. But in the third round, pick 91, I'm looking at a kid out of South Carolina like Zach Pickens. This dude is a great run stuffer. In his career with South Carolina, he has had 7.5 sacks. They may not seem crazy, but also he does have kind of some sort of pass rushing skills to where he can get after the quarterback. And I think that's solid for someone of Chris Jones' stature where he takes up double teams. So you'd be asking for a rookie like Pickens, just beat your man, cause pressures, which he does. And also, Pickens was drawing a lot of double teams as well and still creating pressures. So if you get a guy like Uzomah in the first round who's taking double teams, Pickens in the third round who's creating double teams, you got Jones and Karlaftis, that could be a very, very solid defensive line moving forward. And also, it's a different view, it's a different perspective with Steve Spagnuolo's defense, because if you would ask me before the 2022 NFL season if I would have seen rookies starting on his defense, I would have said hell no. But then we see last year, all these rookies led this Kansas City Chiefs defense to a Super Bowl championship and holding up the Lombardi. So Pickens, if he was drafted in the third round by the Chiefs, he could easily start early and often. Or he's rotating with a guy like Derek Nottie and Tershawn Wharton as well. And honestly, if you have a good rotational piece as well, you keep every offense on their toes. Of course, Chris Jones will be out there, but Spagnuolo, he always loves to give those different type of packages. You don't know if you'll get Jones at defensive tackle. You do not know if you'll get Jones on the edge, which he looks so much better at edge, probably because it was in a rotational situation, but you can see he's getting more comfortable in that as well. I love what Spagnuolo is doing a lot lately for this defense. I want to see it trend upwards next year as well, because it seems like we have this conversation year in and year out, and we'll discuss it after the draft too as well. It's like, will this be the first time Patrick Mahomes gets a top 10 defense? The talent is always there, but it seems like when we're in September, it takes a little while before it gets jumpstart and they get going until it's like November. Spagnuolo's got to have a game plan in from August and have this team bulldozing straight ahead into September, and it's all gas, no brakes, and this team isn't sputtering in September, and the offense is leading the way until November. It's weird. It's weird how I know this team so well, and it's like habits they need to break out. The offense always starts strong, and then it kind of sputters at the end of October, November, and the defense gets to clicking. Yes, the Kansas City Chiefs are always going to be Super Bowl contenders, but last year we didn't really get to see it all mesh at once. Coaching staff has a lot to do in the offseason to make sure everything gels together. But with that, Chiefs Kingdom, we're going to cut off this mock draft. In first round, I had the Kansas City Chiefs selecting Felix Anudike Uzomah, and I think I pronounced his name wrong right there. I did so good the whole video, and I think I messed it up. That's why I ain't going to do it again, and we're going to go to the second round. I have the Kansas City Chiefs selecting Rashee Rice, and then in the third round, I have them selecting Zach Pickens to round that off. I think it fills in 3 major holes and to help go forward, bolster with youth, talent, and they could be day one starters. With that, you let me know how you feel about those first 3 picks in the comments down below. You let me know what would be your first 3 round picks, and we could discuss, we could have fun. But before you do close out, please be sure to subscribe to the video because it's draft season. We are fully engaged. I'm going to keep you up to date on anything Kansas City Chief related, any draft updates you do need. Be sure to be here with that. Also, if you did like this video, please give me that big thumbs up. Y'all take care. Peace.